Ukrainians have reported armed soldiers going door to door in occupied parts of the country to collect votes for self-styled referendums on joining Russia. You have to answer verbally and the soldier marks the answer on the sheet and keeps it, one woman in Enohoda told the. In southern Kherson, Russian guardsmen stood with a ballot box in the middle of the city to collect people's votes. The door-to-door voting is for security, Russian state media says. In-person voting will take place exclusively on the 27th of September, TASS reported. On the other days, voting will be organized in communities and in a door-to-door manner. One woman in Melitopol told the BBC that 2 local collaborators arrived with 2 Russian soldiers at her parents' flat to give them a ballot to sign. My dad put no for joining Russia, the woman said. My mum stood nearby and asked what would happen for putting no. They said, nothing. Mum is now worried that the Russians will persecute them. The woman also said there was 1 ballot for the entire household, rather than per person. Although the evidence is anecdotal, the presence of armed men conducting the vote contradicts Moscow's insistence that this is a free or fair process. What Russia wants from the votes in occupied Ukraine. Experts say the self-styled referendums, taking place across 5 days, will allow Russia to claim, illegally, 4 occupied or partially occupied regions of Ukraine as their own. In other words, a false vote on annexation, 7 months into Russia's invasion. The annexation would not be recognized internationally, but could lead to Russia claiming that its territory is under attack from Western weapons supplied to Ukraine, which could escalate the war further. US President Joe Biden described the referendums as a sham, saying they were a false pretext to try to annex parts of Ukraine by force in violation of international law. The United States will never recognize Ukrainian territory as anything other than part of Ukraine, he said. British Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, said the UK had evidence that Russian officials had already set targets for invented voter turnouts and approval rates for these sham referenda. Mr. Cleverly said Russia planned to formalize the annexation of the 4 regions, Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, by the end of the month. A source in Kherson told the BBC there was no public effort to encourage voting, apart from an announcement on the Russian news agency that people can vote at a port building, which had been disused for 10 years. Another woman in Kherson said she saw armed militants outside the building where the vote seemed to be taking place. She pretended to forget her passport, so she didn't have to vote. The woman said all her friends and family were against the referendum. We don't know how our life will be after this referendum, she said. It is very difficult to understand what they want to do. Kyiv says the referendums will change nothing, and its forces will continue to push to liberate all of the territories. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent mobilization of at least 300,000 extra troops has caused many Russian men of fighting age to flee. One young Russian man who left St. Petersburg for Kazakhstan to avoid the draft told BBC World Service's Outside Source program that most of his friends were also on the move. Right now, I feel like it's a total collapse. I know only maybe 1 or 2 folks that don't think about exile right now, he said. He said some, like him, are traveling across the border, whereas others have gone to small Russian villages to hide. The big problem of Russia is that we didn't think about the war in Ukraine in February as we think about it right now, he said. Additional reporting by Hannah Chornus and Daria Sipagina in Ukraine. Line. What is being asked in the referendums? In the self-declared, unrecognized Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, people are being asked whether they support their republic's accession to Russia as a federal subject. In Zaporizhia and Kherson, they are being asked if they favor the region's secession from Ukraine, creation of an independent country and subsequent accession to Russia as a federal subject. In Luhansk and Donetsk, ballots are printed in Russian only. In Zaporizhia and Kherson, the ballot is in Ukrainian and Russian.